My name is Brian. I'm a welder. I work rotational shifts up north, long stretches away, then a couple of weeks home. People from around here call it the camp life. You live by the clock, by the schedules that send you out at dawn and bring you back when the road is empty and the snow has settled. I like the work. There's something honest about shaping metal, about seeing the result of a day's labor that you can touch and measure. But the pay is better than what most people in our town can get, and that's why I chose it. It's for the future. Sarah and I have known each other since school. We grew up in the same town with the same kind of small ambitions. She was the one who laughed too loud and then apologized for it. She liked new dresses, coffee on the porch, and big, loud family dinners. We dated on and off through our 20s. When she said yes to my first real offer to take her out, I thought, this is it. We dreamed the simple dream, a modest wedding, a decent roof over our heads, kids someday. Nothing flashy, just a life that felt safe. Because our town doesn't have many good jobs, we talked early about how we'd make it work. I told her I was going to take the long shifts and save. It meant being gone more often, but that was the trade. I believed the extra months away would buy us everything. A small down payment, a little savings, the kind of wedding our families could smile about. Sarah listened and nodded. She worried when I signed on for overtime and smiled proudly when I explained how the math worked. "We'll be okay," she said. "That's what you want to hear when you leave at 4 a.m. A year ahead of the wedding, I put money away like it was a job in itself. I kept a small notebook with figures, dates, and goals. I signed the contract at the camp and promised myself no unnecessary nights out, fewer cigarettes, one extra shift if I had to. The account in the bank grew, painfully slow but real. Sarah and I picked a venue, cheap but warm, and we shopped for a ring in the kind of store with velvet pads and polite salespeople. She wanted a big wedding, which I understood. She wanted the day to feel like the fairy tale she had always pictured. I wanted her to have that, but I also wanted us to be unchained by debt. I said no to a big reception. She said she wanted to talk to her family about a different plan. She came home one night with an idea and a seriousness I didn't expect. "What if we did it big?" she asked. "I can't stand the idea of a tiny reception with stale punch. I want people to come away saying it was the night they'll remember." She said it as if it were obvious. I listened. Then she said the words I never expected to hear so easily. "We can take a loan. It's not a bad idea. The payments aren't that big if we stretch it out." She'd been talking to friends online. She said her cousin had done it, and it worked. "We'll get the house too," she added, eyes bright. "A small place, just ours." I remember sitting there with the ring in my pocket and trying to imagine the future. A small house sounded good. A big wedding sounded expensive. A loan could make both happen now. I knew too well that the interest would bite, that a loan is a quiet partner that lasts long after the cake is eaten. Still, I found myself imagining Sophie-sized things I hadn't named yet. Love and worry make strange math. I agreed. I signed the documents at the bank. We took on the responsibility together, or so I thought. 3 weeks before the wedding, Sarah was gone. It happened quietly. One morning, she kissed my cheek before I caught the bus to the site. She told me she had a work meeting and that she would be back later with flowers. I remember thinking how small and bright the bouquet would look in the kitchen. That evening, 2-3 days later, I called and she didn't pick up. Her phone went straight to voicemail. When I finally reached her at midnight, her voice was strange and hurried. "Brian, I need space," she said. "I'm sorry." I asked where she was. She said she'd gone to her parents. I believed her until I didn't. A neighbor called and told me what people whisper in small towns. She'd been seen with Mark, my foreman. He's the same man I worked under for months, reliable, older, with enough money to keep a woman comfortable. He'd been kind to the crew and kind to Sarah, or so the rumors said. "He can give her a normal life, Brian," one of the guys told me at the shop. "Not this roving life of the rig." The phrase sat in my chest like a stone. I drove home that weekend on a borrowed shift. I sat in the driveway and heard nothing. The kind of silence that screams. Her wedding dress hung still in a bag at the back of the closet. The house smelled like a day that had ended too soon. She had taken the engagement ring, not because it belonged to her alone, but because it was the symbol of what we had planned together. When I found the loan documents on the kitchen table, it dawned on me that I wasn't just losing a woman. I was also losing the plan we had both signed for. The bills didn't care about the reasons people left. The payments were due with or without her. Heartbreak is a practical thing when money is involved. The month after she left was a blur of calls I didn't return, and nights I didn't sleep. I worked twice as hard, trying to outrun the ache. You can do that for a time, fill days with hours until the numbness becomes a rhythm. But you cannot work the heart out of a body. People were good to me in the shop. The guys bought me coffee and said things like, "She'll come around," like words can glue people back together. I wanted to believe them because belief is cheaper than sorrow. The loan took its steady slice. The house payments went on autopilot. The neighbors asked polite questions, then slid away when my answers grew thin. Some evenings, I drove north into the low light and thought about how badly plans can unravel. I watched Mark walk past town festivals with Sarah, arm around her waist. It stung like a cut that didn't close. I replayed memories like bad songs until I started to forget where the beginning had been. 5 years passed in a way that felt like a storm compressing into granite. I did what I knew how to do. I worked, not to forget, but to build. I picked up evening welding jobs, took a small engine repair course, and learned office basics for the business side. Slowly, I put together a crew, 2 guys from the camp, a former foreman who wanted out of the corporate grind, a mechanic who could run logistics. We scrounged tools, found a small bay rent, and when we first lit that space up, it felt like lighting candles in the dark. We worked on pipelines, on frames, on the quiet parts of industry that need hands and steady heads. The business wasn't instant success. There were months when paychecks were late, when suppliers wanted cash up front, when cold cleared out bookings. But we adapted. 5 years after Sarah left, I could say the word "we" and mean the crew. I could answer my phone and expect it to be a client, not a call that made my gut sink. The house, we kept it. The loan was a weight that fell lighter with every payment. I learned how to make a budget and hold it like religion. I learned how to sleep when the wind cut through the siding. I met someone else. Her name is Laura. She is patient and practical, and laughed when I burned the first attempt at a backyard barbecued steak. She works at the hospital. She's seen hard things and keeps a calm voice. She showed up with takeout and a bouquet of cheap daisies when I had a flat tire and a bad week. Her kindness wasn't dramatic. It was steady. We dated quietly at first, 2 people who had seen more than their share of trouble appreciating small, practical constancy. When I told her about Sarah, she listened without pity. When I told her about the loan, she did not judge. Slowly, day by day, her presence was like new shelves in a garage, practical, useful, and welcome. All of that time, I tried to avoid the temptation to gloat. I told myself everyone gets their turn. The old ache softened into a memory wrapped in distance and work. I learned to celebrate small wins. First full payroll, the crew's lift cable fixed by our hand, a client who recommended us. Life rearranged itself into a sturdier shape. Then, one cold evening in September, while I was at the shop checking a weld, I got a message. It was from Sarah. Her profile photo looked faded, like a Polaroid left too long in the sun. Her message was short. "Brian, I'm sorry. Things went wrong. I'm left with the child. No house. Nobody. Please. My first reaction was to swallow. I remembered the nights filling out the loan details, the arguments about wedding decorations, the way she had said she needed a normal life. I remembered the ring in the bag and the quiet house. My hands remembered the rhythm of welding, the heat that heals metal. My head knew practical facts. We had an agreement, and then she left. We also had payments, and I had fought to keep us afloat. 5 years later, she was asking for help. I did not reply immediately. I paced the shop's loading dock and felt a strange thing. A hollow where grief used to live, replaced by a cautious steel of decision. I thought about the child she mentioned. Our child? No. That life had not worked out that way. It was a step of life she had chosen, and consequences had followed. I considered calls, emails, even offering advice on local shelters or agencies. But something inside refused a direct line. There's a line between help and enabling. There's also the memory of how it felt to be left with debt and plans and silence. I decided to block and move on. Blocking someone is a modern kind of boundary. It's not legal, not dramatic. It's a quiet closure. When you block someone, you refuse to reopen a wound on demand. It's like locking a door to prevent a storm from walking in again. The act felt final. People at the shop asked if I'd spoken to her. No, I said. She'll have to sort her life out. I kept working. The crew kept building. Laura came around more. She brought steady soups and helped with the accounts when I was rushing between sites. At night, though, a complicated wave would come. I would think, what if she really did need help? What if the child, whoever the child was, had no one? I told myself the world is not a moral ledger where debts are always collected by the same coin. There are real emergencies, and then there are consequences of choices. I told myself that I had chosen self-respect as a form of protection. But the question remained. Did I do the right thing? The message came like a small stone thrown into my calm pond. I'm left with a child and nowhere to go, she wrote. Please help. I made mistakes. I'm sorry. The language was simple. The shame under the words was sharper than the sentences. For a day or two, I had restless sleep. I thought about the heat of the welding helmet and the steady burn of the torch. I thought about the nights I'd sat at the kitchen table recalculating the account and paying the loan. I thought about how her decisions had left me with obligations I hadn't planned to bear alone. There are people in life who will tell you the right thing is always to help. You were once together, they tell you. A child is involved. You can't leave them. This is a moral logic with weight. It appeals to the father in me, to the part that wants to step up for a child who needs warmth. But there is another voice. It is quieter, older, and it asks, at what cost? At what cost to your life, to your family now? When someone walks away and leaves debt and plans unfinished, helping might look like rescuing them from consequences, and rescuing repeatedly creates room for further abandonments. I thought of the nights I'd sat alone, the mortgage payments, the calluses on my hands that came from years of honest effort. I thought of Laura and the way she had been patient enough to stand with me through the worst. Would giving Sarah money or shelter be fair to that loyalty? Would giving her a phone call and a place to stay be a kindness, or a reopening of a door that once slammed? There's also the practical side. If the child she named were in danger of homelessness or harm, that's an emergency. In that case, help is not moral grandstanding. It's urgent action. But her message lacked many details. Left with the child, no house, please, she wrote. No addresses, no social worker names, no verification. It was a plea that asked me to trust her story without evidence. I texted back once, just to say I was not ignoring her because I didn't care, but because I needed time. Her reply was quick and more desperate. "Please, I don't have anyone. I don't know what to do." The text landed like a small, hot coal. I could feel it, smoldering. But help is also more than warmth. It is structure. I began to think of ways to do practical help without enabling a pattern. I could have offered names of shelters, a referral to a social agency, some contacts for low-income housing. I could have arranged a small fund to get her temporary relief if I were convinced the need was urgent and not manipulative. I called Laura and asked her, "What would you do?" She said, "You can help the child, Brian, but verify. Don't let guilt be a lever." Her words were simple and painful. In the end, I made the choice to block. I explained to no one except myself and the crew. Blocking felt mean to some of my friends, righteous to others. To me, it felt like closing a door and turning the key. The act changed nothing in her life. It changed everything in mine. I stopped playing the role of repairman for a life she walked out of. I kept living. The crew kept welding. Laura and I made dinners and planned weekends that were less about saving the past and more about building a future that didn't have echoes of what hurt me. But the question didn't leave me. In the quiet of some nights, I would imagine her on a park bench, small child in her arms, asking for help with a voice thin as paper. I would imagine calling the number that was blocked, asking 1,000 frantic details, and then delivering what she needed, regardless of the wounds. That sounded noble and terrible at once. Noble because it would be saving a child. Terrible because it would teach the world a lesson I didn't want to teach. That leaving and making a mess invites rescue. The men I worked with had quarrels over this. Some said, "Help is help. Do it, and then walk away." Others said help without boundaries is the easiest way to lose your peace. We argued over beers under the bay lights, and at times the debate turned personal. I realized that there is no universal rule here. Each decision carries its own weight. I could not know if the child was safe. I could not know if the story was true. I chose boundary over risk. I chose self-preservation over uncertain rescue. 5 years later, life is quieter in a different way. Business was steady. The crew was solid. Laura and I had our routines. She trusted me in ways that felt earned. I still thought of Sarah in small, private moments. Sometimes I'd drive past the place Mark used to live and imagine whether he had kept her and whether that was enough for them. One morning, a new friend from the community group told me that she'd seen Sarah in a grocery store, looking tired and small, with a child at her side. It was only a glimpse, not proof of anything. When I think about the choice to block, it's never a single memory. It's a tapestry of small decisions and the way they stitched me into a new life. If I had reached out and helped the child directly through verified channels, if I had insisted on a plan, court filings, or social services involvement, would that have been different? Maybe. If I had stepped forward with cash or shelter without structure, the pattern of leaving might have strengthened. There's a crucial difference between compassion and rescue. Compassion stabilizes. Rescue can free someone from the consequences they must face to change. People often say that forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself. They are right. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to carry the pain like a stone in your pocket. I forgave in the sense that I let go of the bitterness. I did not forgive by reopening my life to the person who had left me with an unpaid loan and an abandoned plan. That felt different. There is a responsibility to the self and to those who stand with you now, to Laura, to my crew, to the life I rebuilt. I still wonder, though, whether a different choice would have fit a better moral code. If a child truly needs shelter today, every parent should step in. But the world rarely presents clean cases. Human lives are muddied by choices, by pride, by desperation. I had to weigh my obligation to a person who chose to leave against my obligation to the child she claimed and to the people who had stayed. So was I right to block? In part, yes. I protected a life I had rebuilt through honest labor and quiet courage. I didn't owe Sarah an ongoing safety net when she had abandoned our plan. On the other hand, if there had been solid evidence of danger to a child, I would have judged differently. The right action in that case looks like immediate, verified intervention calling child services, arranging shelter, or filing for custody if necessary. My choice was about boundaries, not about refusing care where care was urgent and real. Now I ask you, the listener, if you were in my shoes, welding through the nights, keeping the bills paid, scarred and steady, what would you have done? Would you have reached out and offered help directly? Would you have demanded proof and pushed her toward verified social support? Would you have forgiven and opened your door, risking the past repeating itself? Or would you, like me, have locked the contact and moved forward to protect the life you rebuilt? Tell me how you'd act. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the like button. It truly helps the channel grow and keeps these stories alive.